My name is Jay, and for years I thought I had the perfect American life. I had a stable career, a comfortable home in the suburbs just outside Seattle, and a wife, Emily, whom I trusted with everything. To friends and family, we looked like the picture of happiness. At holidays, people would comment on how well we fit together. On vacations, we laughed until our stomachs hurt. Everyone believed we were the kind of couple who would last forever, and honestly, I thought it too. But cracks don't always appear with thunder. Sometimes they whisper. Emily started spending more nights at the office. She said her boss, Richard, pushed the team hard. There were business trips that felt too frequent, text messages she guarded too closely, and an emptiness that crept into our nighttime conversations. At first, I told myself she was stressed, that every marriage had phases, that love could outlast the distance growing between us. I didn't know then that Emily was betraying me with Richard, and while most men might have confronted her in rage, I made a different choice. I decided to stay silent, to wait, and to set a trap she would never see coming. Before we begin, I would appreciate it. If you like this video, you can help me continue to spread the meaningful lesson. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like this video, please comment 1. If you don't like it, please comment 0 to let me know so I can make a better video for you. Now, let's get started. The cracks in our marriage did not burst open with some dramatic explosion. They slipped in quietly, like fog rolling over Puget Sound, soft, persistent, almost invisible until you realized everything around you was damp and cold. At first, it was little changes in routine. For years, Emily and I had a rhythm. We cooked dinner together most nights, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, sometimes takeout Chinese when work got hectic. Afterward, we'd sit on the porch with a glass of wine, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes until the streetlights came on. That rhythm was ours, and it anchored me. But slowly, Emily stopped showing up for it. It began with harmless excuses. A late meeting, a project deadline, a last-minute email from her boss, Richard. "Don't wait up," she would text. At first, I believed her. She had always been ambitious, always the one who stayed late to prove herself. I respected that about her. But after the third or fourth time reheating leftovers by myself, I couldn't shake the gnawing thought that maybe late meetings weren't just about work anymore. The phone became another sign. Emily used to leave hers on the counter without a second thought, the screen lighting up with random notifications, Pinterest recipes, group texts from her college friends. We used to laugh about how addicted people were to their phones. But suddenly, hers was always flipped face down, the sound switched off. When I walked into her room, she'd slide it into her pocket like it was a secret. One night, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. My heart pounded as I glanced at the screen. A message preview glowed. "Same time tomorrow?" No name attached, just a number I didn't recognize. My hands trembled, but I didn't unlock it. I couldn't. Instead, I stared at the condensation sliding down the bathroom mirror, and I knew deep inside something was very, very wrong. I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was stress, that she was burned out. I even suggested therapy once, gently, over a quiet Sunday morning breakfast. "Maybe it would help us talk," I said, pouring her coffee. She gave a small laugh, not even looking up from her phone. "Jay, don't be dramatic. We're fine." But her fine felt like an empty room. Then came the business trips. Emily had traveled before, sure, but not like this. Portland, San Francisco, Chicago, always client meetings, always team trainings. She'd return with souvenirs, little things she thought might distract me. A baseball cap from Portland, a box of fancy chocolates from Chicago. But it wasn't the gifts I noticed. It was the way she came back different, sometimes lighter, glowing, like she had been somewhere she wanted to stay longer. Sometimes exhausted, short-tempered, and with eyes that darted when I asked too many questions. There was one evening I'll never forget. It was our anniversary. I had made a reservation at a little Italian place we both loved, the kind of spot where the owner always brought complimentary Moncello, because love should be celebrated. I ironed my shirt, bought flowers, and even picked up the dessert she always craved, tiramisu. At 5:45, I got the text. Running late. Richard scheduled a last-minute meeting. Can we rain check? Love you. I sat at that table alone, staring at the empty chair across from me. The owner gave me a sad smile and boxed up dessert for her. That box sat in our fridge for days, untouched, like a reminder how easily love could be replaced by excuses. Her boss's name started appearing more often in conversation. 2. Richard used to be just background noise in Emily's stories. The guy who messed up during presentations or made corny jokes at holiday parties. Now he was everywhere. Richard needs me on this project. Richard said I did a great job. Richard thinks I should take the lead. At first, I wanted to be proud of her, proud that her work was recognized. But each time she said his name, it felt like a wedge was being driven deeper between us. I noticed smaller details that haunted me. A different perfume on her neck. One I didn't recognize. Clothes she never used to wear to the office. Silk blouses, fitted skirts, high heels. Receipts in the trash from restaurants I'd never been to. Expensive wine bottles we never shared. I once found a hair tie in her car, tucked between the seats. It wasn't her style or her color. When I asked about it, she laughed lightly. Oh, Megan borrowed my car, she said. But Megan lived across town, and I knew Emily would never lend her car for no reason. I began to write things down. At first, it was just to calm myself, to make sense of the unease crawling in my stomach. Dates, times, and little observations. July 12th. Came home at midnight. Showered immediately. July 19th. Portland trip. Suitcase light. Came back with new clothes. July 24th. Smell of cologne on jacket. It felt obsessive, but it gave me control. It gave me proof that I wasn't crazy. One night at a barbecue, surrounded by friends, Emily spent half the evening glued to her phone in the corner of the yard. Work emergency, she said when someone teased her. Later, when she rejoined us, she drank quickly, laughed too loudly, and clung to my arm like she was trying to prove something. On the drive home, with the windows cracked and summer air rushing in, I asked softly, "We're okay, right?" She squeezed my hand and smiled. "Of course, Jay." But her hand felt foreign in mine, like I was holding on to a stranger. The hardest part wasn't the lies. It was the silences, not the screaming matches or slammed doors. There were none of those. It was the quiet moments that used to be filled with laughter, now drowned in stillness. Brushing our teeth side by side, staring at our own reflections without speaking. Watching a TV show we once joked about, now in silence. Her eyes fixed on the screen while mine searched for the woman I used to know. The bed felt colder, even when she was lying beside me. The final straw came one rainy evening. Seattle rain has a way of clinging to everything, seeping into your bones. Emily walked in, dripping wet, laughing like she stepped out of a movie scene. She kissed my cheek quickly and headed straight to the shower. Her phone buzzed on the counter. This time, I didn't touch it. I just watched the screen light up with a preview. Tomorrow, 6:30? Same place. My chest tightened. I didn't need to open it. I already knew. That night, I sat in the garage with my notebook. The smell of motor oil and damp concrete surrounded me. I opened a fresh page and wrote, "It's Richard. It's been him all along." My hand shook, but not from heartbreak anymore. From resolve. I made a choice right there. I would not confront her in rage. I would not scream or beg. That's what you would expect. What Richard would expect. No, I would do something better. I would be silent. I would be patient. I would set a trap so carefully that when the truth came crashing down, it wouldn't just break her affair. It would destroy everything she thought she was going to take from me. The confirmation didn't come in one single lightning strike. It came in pieces, each sharper than the last, until denial was no longer possible. By then, my silence had become my armor, and every new fragment of truth only hardened my resolve. The first undeniable proof arrived one Thursday evening in late July. Emily had told me she'd be staying late with Richard to finish a quarterly report. That wasn't unusual anymore. What was unusual was the voicemail I received from her mother around 9:30 p.m. "Jay, honey, Is Emily with you? I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. I said what I always said, that she was at work, and we hung up politely. But something about her mother's tone, it was laced with the same suspicion I'd been choking on for weeks. Later that night, I logged into our shared credit card account to pay a bill. A new charge popped up, time-stamped 8:14 p.m. It wasn't for office supplies or a ride-share back from downtown. It was for a bottle of wine and 2 entrees at a restaurant just outside the city. A romantic spot candlelit, where we'd celebrated Emily's promotion years ago. The sting was instant. I could almost picture her sitting at the same table, but with Richard across from her instead of me. I drove by the place the next day on my way back from work. Just to see. The sight of it, the red awning, the warm glow of lights through fog windows, made my stomach twist. In my mind, their laughter echoed against those walls. That night, I added another entry into my notebook. July 28th, dinner with Richard, restaurant where we had our 5th anniversary. Writing it down didn't ease the pain, but it reminded me of something important. Every move they made, every secret rendezvous, was another piece of the trap I was setting. The second piece came through technology. We had installed a small Wi-Fi, enabled door camera months ago after a rash of package thefts in the neighborhood. I'd all but forgotten about it until one night. Scrolling through the app, I noticed a clip from earlier that week. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. Emily had told me she was in Portland for a training that night. Yet there she was in the footage, stepping out an Uber in front of our house, hair slightly disheveled, adjusting her blouse as if she had rushed to put it back together. What chilled me wasn't just a lie. It was the fact that she didn't know she'd been caught. She unlocked the door, glancing around nervously, then disappeared inside. I replayed that clip over and over until I felt numb. It was no longer suspicion. It was fact. My wife was cheating on me, and her boss was the man helping her do it. Still, I didn't confront her. I closed the app, wrote the date in my notebook, and went to bed before she got home from Portland. The third piece was the one that broke me, though not in the way I expected. It was early August when I decided to leave work early. A rare move for me. I wanted to surprise her. At least, that's what I told myself. Maybe, deep down, I just wanted the truth to slap me in the face. When I pulled into the garage, Emily's car wasn't there. That was odd. She had no meeting scheduled out of town. I walked into the house, the air still and silent, and noticed her laptop bag tossed casually on the couch. But her phone wasn't in sight. Something pushed me to check the Find My iPhone feature we'd set up years ago for emergencies. My hands shook as I tapped her name. A map appeared, the little dot blinking back at me. She wasn't at work. She wasn't anywhere near our neighborhood. She was downtown, in a boutique hotel Richard's company frequently used for clients. I could have driven there. I could have stormed into that hotel and ripped open the door, but I didn't. Instead, I sat in my truck in the garage, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I stared at the screen until the dot didn't move anymore. My mind replayed every excuse, every late night, every laugh she had shared with me while betraying me at the same time. And then, slowly I loosened my grip. Anger wasn't my weapon. Silence was. A week later, proof presented itself without me even searching. I had been invited to a work dinner downtown. As I was walking back to my car afterward, I passed a dimly lit alley, behind a row of restaurants. At first, I paid no attention. Then I heard it, Emily's laugh, a sound I knew better than my heartbeat. I froze. There she was, standing close to Richard. Not just close, intimate. His hand rested on her lower back as if it belonged there. She tilted her head back, her smile wide, her eyes glowing the way they hadn't for me in months. I didn't move, hidden by the shadows, watching as she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a quick mistake. It was slow, deliberate, and familiar. I felt hollow, not shattered, not burning with rage, just empty, like someone had scooped out my insides and left a shell standing in the dark. I could have confronted them right there. I could have shouted, demanded, humiliated them in public, but instead I turned away. I walked back to my car, drove home in silence, and poured myself a glass of whiskey I didn't even taste. That night, I didn't write in my notebook. I didn't need to. The image of Emily kissing Richard was branded into me forever. The final confirmation came in the form of words, not actions. A week after that alley encounter, Emily left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she showered. She had forgotten to close her email. My eyes caught on a subject line, tomorrow night, against my better judgment, or maybe in line with the man I was becoming. I clicked. Email was from Richard. It read, "Can't stop thinking about last night. Same hotel, same time." My chest tightened, but my mind remained calm. There was, in black and white, undeniable. My wife was having an affair with her boss. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had built a life with, was sneaking off to hotel rooms while I sat at home waiting for her return. And yet, strangely, I didn't break. I didn't scream. I closed the laptop gently, poured myself another drink, and stared out the window at the dark Seattle skyline. Because in that moment, the affair was no longer the worst part. The worst part was how much they underestimated me. Emily thought she was clever. Richard thought he was untouchable. But neither of them realized a man they believed to be blind was watching everything, recording everything, waiting for the perfect moment. The discovery didn't destroy me. It forged me into something sharper. The anger that might have consumed another man became focused. The pain hardened into a strategy. I wasn't going to lose my dignity by fighting in the shadows. I was going to wait until the stage was brightest, until every eye was watching. And when the day came, the day of divorce, they would both see the trap I had been building piece by piece. The night I read Richard's email was the night everything inside me shifted. The pain that had once cut me open now felt like steel cooling into shape. I stopped asking myself why. Why Emily betrayed me. Why did she risk everything? Why would she choose Richard over me? The questions no longer mattered. What mattered was what I would do with the truth I now owned. I knew better than confront her in anger. Anger was sloppy. Anger left scars you couldn't control. What I needed was precision. And so I began a plan, not for a fight, not for reconciliation, but for justice delivered in silence. The first step was legal. In America, divorce is not just the end of marriage. It's a battle over assets, reputations, and sometimes children. Emily didn't know it, but Washington is a no-fault divorce state. Affairs don't always sway the division of property, but they can when you have evidence and when you present it in front of the right judge. Evidence, I had plenty. Screenshots, receipts, emails, and the footage from the door camera. Enough to turn, she said, into an undeniable fact. I scheduled a quiet consultation with an attorney recommended by a friend. His office was a modest building with frosted glass windows, tucked between a bank and a sandwich shop. Inside, he shook my hand firmly and asked me to start from the beginning. I laid it all out, Emily's late nights, the receipts, the hotel, the email. He listened, occasionally nodding, jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, tapping the pen thoughtfully. "Jay," he said, "you're sitting on a mountain of leverage. If you stay patient, we can structure this in a way that protects your finances and your dignity. But you need to keep your cards close. Don't tip her off. Don't give her a reason to think you know." I walked out of that office with a folder under my arm and a plan forming in my head. For the first time in months, I felt control returning. The second step was financial. For years, Emily and I had shared everything. Joint accounts, a mortgage, even a shared investment portfolio. It had always felt like trust. Now it felt like exposure. Quietly, I began moving my assets into separate accounts, ones she couldn't touch. I rerouted my paycheck. I secured the title to my truck. I spoke with the bank about refinancing the house solely under my name, citing personal reasons. Each move was a chess piece sliding into place, unseen, deliberate. Emily noticed none of it. Why would she? She believed I was blind, naive, too trusting to ever question her. That was her mistake. The third step was patience. And patience, I discovered, is an art form. I acted as though nothing had changed. When Emily claimed she was working late, I kissed her on the cheek and told her not to push herself too hard. when she disappeared on business trips. I texted her safe travels and sent a picture of the dog curled on the couch. I smiled at her jokes, listened to her stories, even bought her flowers once, just to watch her eyes flicker with guilt she thought she had hidden. Every gesture was calculated. By appearing calm, I ensured she never suspected the storm I was preparing. By pretending to be oblivious, I let her dig herself deeper. The more careless she became, the stronger my case grew. One Saturday in September, she told me she was heading to the office for a weekend strategy session with Richard. I nodded, kissed her goodbye, and waited until her car left the driveway. Then I followed, not close enough to raise suspicion, but close enough to see her turn not toward the office, but toward the downtown Marriott. I parked across the street, engine off, and watched her meet Richard in the lobby. They didn't even bother hiding, walking hand in hand to the elevators. I snapped photos, each click of the camera a nail in the coffin of their secrecy. But I didn't confront them. Not yet. I simply documented. Then drove home and mowed the lawn, waving to neighbors like it was any other Saturday. That night, when Emily returned smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, I handed her a plate of lasagna and asked how her meeting went. She smiled, told me it was productive, and kissed me on the cheek. I smiled back, hiding the satisfaction that came from knowing she was dancing straight into my plan. The fourth step was setting the stage. I told my lawyer I wanted the divorce proceedings to be public, not private mediation. Let the world see. Let the truth burn in daylight. He cautioned me it could get messy, he said. I only smiled. Messy for her, maybe, not for me. I began organizing my evidence into neat folders, emails in one, photos in another, receipts stacked in chronological order. I even printed out the door camera footage stills, each timestamp bold in the corner. My lawyer called it overkill. I called it preparation. But revenge is not just about evidence. It's about timing. And timing meant waiting for the day Emily felt most confident, most certain she had won. That day I knew would be the day of divorce. She believed she could walk away with half of everything, maybe even more. She thought Richard was her ticket to a better life, that he would stand by her in court, shielding her from consequence. I intended to let her believe that right up until the gavel fell. In the meantime, I perfected my mask. I went to dinner with her family, smiling through conversations about work and vacations. I shook Richard's hand at a company holiday event, gripping it firmly enough to make him flinch, though he covered it with a laugh. Emily's parents told me I was a good husband. Richard's colleagues told me Emily was invaluable to the team. I nodded, agreed, and tucked every compliment away like kindling for the fire that was coming. The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was the moments when doubt tried to creep in. Late at night, lying beside her, I sometimes wondered if I could forgive, if I could confront her, let it all out, and maybe salvage something. But then I would remember the email, the kiss in the alley, the lies stacked one on top of another. Forgiveness was not in the cards. What was in the cards was justice. And justice, I realized, didn't need shouting. It didn't need violence. It needed patience, planning, and the precision of a trap sprung at exactly the right moment. By October, my preparations were complete. My lawyer was ready. My finances were secure. My evidence was airtight. And Emily, she was more distant than ever, lost in her secret world with Richard, confident that I was too blind to see it. Little did she know, every secret she kept was already in my hands. Every lie she told was another step into the snare I had built. She thought she was walking toward freedom, toward a life with Richard and the spoils of our marriage. But in reality, she was walking straight into the trap I had set, a trap that would close around her on the day she least expected it, our divorce day. And when it did, I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't need to. The silence that had once broken me would become the silence that destroyed her. The morning of our divorce arrived colder than I expected. Seattle skies were a hard slate gray, rain threatening but holding off, as though even the weather understood the weight of what was coming. I dressed deliberately. Dark suit, crisp shirt, muted tie. Not flashy, not vengeful, just composed. I wanted the judge, the attorneys, and especially Emily to see a man calm, dignified, in control. Emily, on the other hand, walked into the courthouse with Richard by her side, her head high, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She wore a tailored navy dress, one she had bought recently for work functions. I noticed the way she glanced at me, half triumphant, half rehearsed, as if she had already convinced herself she had won. Richard trailed slightly behind her, hand resting on the small of her back like he owned what was never his. Her attorney, a sharp-tongued woman in her 40s, greeted them warmly. They looked like a team, confident, prepared, certain they would walk out with the house, the accounts, and more than half of everything I had built. What they didn't know was that every smile, every shred of confidence, was about to be stripped away. The courtroom itself was plain, with paneling, rows of benches, the American flag hanging in the corner. But to me, it felt like an arena. On one side, Emily and Richard whispered together, the air between them heavy with smugness. On the other hand, I sat with my lawyer, the folder of evidence resting between us like a loaded weapon. The judge entered, an older man with silver hair and a face that looked carved from granite. "Let's begin," he said, voice steady. "No nonsense." Emily's attorney went first. She painted Emily as a devoted wife, trapped in marriage with a husband too consumed by work to notice her needs. She spoke of Emily's contributions, her sacrifices, her right to financial security after years of supporting my career. I listened without expression, hands folded, as if every word was air passing through the room. Then my lawyer stood. He was deliberate, measured. "Your Honor," he began, "my client has no objection to divorce. But the question before us is not only about dissolution. It is about truth." He opened the folder and laid out the first exhibit. Screenshots of emails, their headers unmistakable. The words were there in black and white. Richard's name stamped across the screen. Same hotel, same time. Can't stop thinking about last night. The courtroom stirred. Emily's attorney objected, tried to spin it as taken out of context. My lawyer remained calm. "Context," he said smoothly, "is cumulative." Next came the receipts. Dinners for 2, wine bottles, and hotel rooms billed on weekends Emily claimed to be in Portland or Chicago. Each receipt slid across the judge's bench like a stone dropped into water, sending ripples through the silence. Emily shifted in her seat, her face paling with each page. Richard's jaw tightened, his hand pulling slightly away from hers. Then the photos, grainy but clear enough. Emily and Richard walking into the Marriott hand in hand. Emily kissed him in the alley behind the restaurant, his hand pressed against her waist. The gas from the courtroom benches was sharp, like air sucked from the room. Emily's eyes darted to Richard, searching for reassurance, but he looked forward, stone-faced, pretending to be untouched. Finally, the footage. My lawyer played the clip from our door camera. Emily arrived home near midnight, hair tousled, blouse crooked, when she had told me she was in Portland. The timestamp glowed on the corner of the screen, undeniable. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, and for the first time that morning, Emily looked down. "Your Honor," my lawyer concluded, "this is not a case of a wife simply seeking fairness after years of marriage. This is a case of betrayal, deliberate, calculated betrayal, with a direct superior at her workplace. My client has come prepared with proof not to shame, but to protect himself. He asks only for what is just, to retain what he has earned, without being penalized for the deception of others." The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. Emily's attorney shuffled her papers, her arguments collapsing like a house of cards. She tried to object again, claiming irrelevance. The judge shook his head. "Infidelity may not always sway property division in this state," he said, his voice firm, "but credibility does. And right now, the credibility of your client is in serious doubt." Emily's face was pale, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. Richard sat stiff, his gaze fixed on the judge, refusing to look at her. For the first time, I saw something crack between them, a gap opening that no whispered promise could bridge. When the ruling came, it was almost anticlimactic. The judge awarded me primary control of our shared assets. The house, my truck, my retirement accounts, all remained under my name. Emily was granted a modest settlement, far less than what she had likely imagined. The judge's tone carried no sympathy, only cold judgment. Actions have consequences, Mrs. Turner. This court cannot ignore the pattern presented here. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded, thanking the judge, while Emily stared at the table, tears welling in her eyes. Richard shifted uncomfortably, clearly eager to escape the spotlight. As we left the courtroom, I walked with steady steps, my silence louder than any outburst could have been. Emily tried to meet my eyes, maybe to plead, maybe to explain, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. Richard didn't even try. He slipped away quickly, abandoning the woman he had once risked everything for. Outside, the rain finally broke, drumming against the pavement. I pulled on my coat, inhaled the sharp air, and felt lighter than I had in months. Justice had not been loud. It had not been violent. It had been patient, methodical, silent, and it had left Emily stripped of the illusions she had built. She thought she had walked into court with power, with Richard at her side, ready to take everything from me. Instead, she walked out with nothing but shame, her so-called partner already distancing himself. For me, there was no triumph in it, only a deep, quiet satisfaction, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that lingers when you know you held your ground with dignity. In the end, Emily had underestimated the man she thought was blind. She thought silence meant weakness. She thought patience meant ignorance. She thought betrayal would break me. But on divorce day, the trap I had set closed around her, and she finally learned what silence was capable of. When the gavel struck and the divorce was finalized, I thought the sound would echo in my head forever. But the real echo came later, in the quiet spaces where Emily's absence was louder than her presence ever had been. She left the courthouse pale, her shoulders hunched under a raincoat that seemed suddenly too big for her. Richard didn't walk beside her. In fact, by the time we stepped outside, he had already vanished. One moment he was there, stiff and silent, and the next he was gone, slipping into a black car, without even a glance back. Emily stood on the courthouse steps alone, scanning the crowd as if searching for him, as if refusing to believe he had abandoned her so quickly. But that was the truth of Richard. He had never planned to stay. To him, she had been a convenient distraction, not a future. I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. Watching her stand there, betrayed by the very man she had chosen over me, I felt only the steady calm of justice served. She had gambled everything, her marriage, her dignity, her security, on Richard's promises, and she had lost. In the weeks that followed, the fallout only deepened. Emily moved into a small apartment across town, nothing like the home we had built together. Gone were the marble countertops she used to brag about, the garden she once said she'd always dreamed of, the neighborhood where everyone waved when they walked their dogs. She traded it all for four walls that smelled faintly of stale smoke and a rent bill she could barely afford. Her family, one so warmed me, called occasionally to apologize for her behavior. Her mother admitted she had suspected something long before I did, but hadn't wanted to interfere. Her father, a man of few words, simply said she made her bed. They didn't disown her, but the disappointment was clear, hanging in every conversation. She had not only betrayed me, she had humiliated them too. At work, things grew worse for her. Word of the affair spread quietly through the office corridors. It started with whispers, then stares, then open avoidance. Richard, desperate to save his reputation, cut her loose almost immediately. Within a month, she was transferred out of his department, then quietly let go under the pretense of restructuring. In truth, nobody wanted the scandal lingering around. She had gone from rising star to liability, and in corporate America, liabilities are discarded. I saw her once, by chance, at the grocery store. She looked smaller, thinner, her hair pulled back without care, wearing an oversized sweater that swallowed her frame. She caught sight of me in the frozen aisle, and for a moment, her lips parted like she wanted to speak. But then she dropped her eyes, turned her cart, and walked away quickly, leaving behind a basket with half her groceries still inside. That image stayed with me longer than I expected. Not because I missed her, I didn't, but because it reminded me how swiftly choices carve out destinies. Emily had once been the woman everyone admired, the woman I believed in with every fiber of my being. Now she was a ghost drifting through the life she had destroyed with her own hands. And Richard? He carried on as though nothing had happened. Men like him always do. Rumors swirled about another young woman at the office, another late-night strategy session. He hadn't lost his job, but his marriage cracked quietly, and his wife filed for separation soon after. I didn't need to follow his story closely. I knew his kind, always moving on, never satisfied, leaving behind wreckage. As for me, the silence in my house no longer felt suffocating. At first, it was strange, sitting alone at the kitchen table, hearing only the tick of clock. But over time, the quiet became peace. I rediscovered small joys, running in the mornings without the knot in my chest, reading late into the night, cooking meals that didn't go cold waiting for someone to come home. The dog, once restless, now followed me contentedly from room to room, as if even he knew the storm had passed. People sometimes asked if I would date again, if I believed in love after betrayal. My answer was simple. Love, perhaps. Trust, eventually. But never blind trust again. I had learned that trust, like glass, once shattered, never returns to its original strength. Emily's downfall was not my celebration. I didn't raise a glass or dance in the ruins of what we once were. Revenge, I realized, isn't about gloating. It's about reclaiming what was taken from you, your dignity, your control, your peace of mind. And on that front, I had won. The trap I had set had worked perfectly. She walked into court thinking she held all the cards, and she walked out stripped of everything she thought she controlled. She had underestimated my silence, mistaking it for weakness. But silence was never weakness. It was patience. And patience, in the end, was the sharpest weapon of all. When I look back now, I don't see the man who was betrayed. I see the man who endured, who waited, who struck when the moment was right. And I see Emily, standing alone on those courthouse steps in the Seattle rain, realizing too late that she had lost not just her marriage, but her future. That was the aftermath. She lost everything. And I found myself again. Looking back on everything, I realized betrayal doesn't just break a marriage. It breaks the illusion of who you thought someone was. Emily's choices and Richard's arrogance nearly shattered me, but instead, they taught me the value of silence, patience, and strategy. Revenge doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes the quietest moves, made at the right moment, bring the greatest justice. What I gained was not just freedom from a toxic marriage, but freedom to rebuild myself on my terms. I didn't walk away bitter. I walked away sharper, wiser, and calmer. That's the true victory. Not watching someone else lose, but watching yourself rise. And now, I want to ask you, after hearing my story, what lesson stands out to you the most? What did you learn that you could apply to your own life, whether it's about trust, patience, or knowing when to stand your ground? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your reflections might inspire someone else who is facing their storm. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think, or even if it simply reminded you of the strength we all carry deep inside, then I hope you'll stay connected. If you liked this video, please leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.